I first met Bruce when he came in to take over the, at the time, floundering Bitcoin Foundation. And there had been a vote of someone who came in for the purpose to shut it down, saying they're spending too much money. They're like, we should just like take it over and distribute the Bitcoins. And, because the Bitcoin Foundation was built with the purpose of initially just funding Gavin Andreson's salary, and everybody would chip in Bitcoin because unlike Polygon and other, modern day protocols, there was no, kind of Bitcoin fund for developers. It was just like, you mined it, you got it. And so they basically said to early people who had a lot of Bitcoin, give us some Bitcoin. I think it was like a couple $1,000s for a corporate membership or a couple $100 for a personal membership. Back when Bitcoin was like $1, right? Roger Ver, I think, and KNC Miner were the platinum people who put in 100,000 apiece. Again, back when Bitcoin was under $1. And Bruce came in with really, if you've seen Bruce over the years, he likes to wear his Superman, outfit. And, he has filled that role several times in his career. And he really came in with his cape and Superman and saved the foundation, at least until it kind of like naturally evolved into, where MIT then said, oh, we'll pay the developers. And the main developer lived in Boston. He's like, all right, I'm working at MIT now. So that's really where the MIT digital lab came out of, digital currency lab. But Bruce came in and had a very simple solution for keeping the foundation alive. He said, we're now an all-volunteer organization. We can't run out of money if we don't spend any. And simple, right? Simple solutions by great people. And he said, anyone wants to volunteer? Great. Report to me. I'm volunteering. Anybody had a salary before? You don't have one now. Anybody had a travel budget? You don't have one now. And that basically saved the foundation. So I can say so many other things about Bruce. He's been a great friend. He started the Satoshi Roundtable, which is I like my conference. He runs the best conference. I mean, it's once a year. It's just legendary. And, I'm proud to say I'm the only person who's been to every one. I got a giant camel award for it this last year for being the last man standing. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Bruce Fenton.
Thank you. Thanks, Michael. Great to see so many great friends here. Good to be here. Nice to be in the Tyson Mansion. It's the only place they let me in anymore. I got kicked out of every casino in the town. There's 22 casinos in a mile. They're each 40 minutes from each other, and they kicked me out of every one of them for too much winning. Do you know this? That they'll kick you out if you win too much? Yeah, they kick you out for too much winning. I've just been winning and winning. The whole industry's winning. Yeah, no, I'm kidding. They didn't kick me out. They weren't happy though, because I was walking through there and I saw some people at the slots and I said, "Hey, what are you doing? You can't be affording to do this. I'm a financial advisor. You're wasting your money. I can tell by looking at you. You're wasting your money. You ought to be stacking sats. Fiat's a melting ice cube." And then, security comes up and I said, "I'm just being myself." And they said, "That's fine, but could you disconnect yourself from the PA system? We're losing customers here." So they weren't happy. And I've only gambled $5 in 5 years, so I guess I'm a low roller. But I got enough risk in the Bitcoin space to keep me busy. But yeah, I did talk to one of these guys. I said, "What are you doing, man?" He's sitting there. He's got his cigarette like this, and he's just kind of pressing the button again and again. And I said, "What's going on, man?" He says, I'm just drowning myself in the illusion of what's going on here, and I'm in this soul-sucking casino with my net worth being drained before my eyes, and I'm in deep depression, and my daughter's on OnlyFans, and nobody likes me, and my business was shut down by the COVID tyrants in 2021, and I'm under this illusion in this place that." I said, hold on, have you heard about Bitcoin reserve strategies? This will cheer you up. So there is a lot to be happy about. I saw Ross Ulbricht yesterday. He's a free man. Yay! Gary Gensler's gone. He should. Well, yeah, that's a fair point. There's a lot that's to be happy about. And I used to say for years, I said, it's either going to work or it's not. And if it doesn't, then we've made a lot of good friends, and we'll have the Satoshi Roundtable at the Motel 6, and we'll, open up the, what do they call it, tailgate party in the back and have some hot dogs, and that would be a good life. But it seems like now it just might work, First they laugh at you, and then they fight you, and then you win. And they try. That's the fighting part, and they've tried. And in 2013, I was speaking to a room like this. I said if they knew what was going to happen, they'd kill everybody in this room and be done with it. But they didn't, and they had a lot of good reasons to laugh. I mean, it's a dumb idea. This whole thing is stupid. It's crazy, but it's not as stupid. I mean, the idea that you take nerd money and you take a computer and you print some stuff in a digital format and that's value is a dumb idea. It's a dumb idea. You know what's dumber? Fiat. Fiat's dumber. I mean, talk about dumb. Like, oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a guy in a big fancy office paid for with money that they stole from you, and he's going to press a button and print it and give it to his friends and cronies to do war and violence and destruction all over the world. We're not the crazy ones. They're the crazy ones. It's there's a lot to be positive, and then when you win, you finally, they laugh at you, maybe rightfully. It's a dumb idea. It's just the least dumb out there. If you know anything better than Bitcoin, please let me know. I think it's dumb, but I think Fiat's a lot dumber, and I think everything else is dumb. And it's a weird Fiat world. It's a fake world of phony nonsense, and I feel like a lot of people are caught in this world of not knowing what is true. And it looks like we're winning now. We really are winning. I mean, you see what's happening with, Gensler and Ross and the President of the United States and the Vice President of the United States, and real money coming into this. When I first started, it was funny because I had been lucky enough to work on kind of big picture money stuff. They didn't care about this space. It was way too small. The entire market cap of Bitcoin wasn't even big enough for an allocation for these things. But now you have sovereign funds and serious family offices and the very, very top of the food chain type of people. And our winning is fuel. We can use our winning to make a difference in the world. The winning leads to more winning, and it leads to actual influence. We can actually influence the world and change the world, which is, I think, the really, really exciting thing about this space, even beyond the tremendous financial gains that so many have been blessed to have. And I want to use that power personally and our influence to push for reasonable, sound regulation, which means none. None. Reasonable and sound is none. There should be none of this regulation. That's what's reasonable and sound. I'm crazy. I'm a crazy person. I'm crazy New Hampshire redneck free stater. And why am I crazy? Because when I was 5 years old, somebody taught me. I used to get in fights with the sixth graders, and somebody said, you shouldn't hurt or hit someone or do harm to them unless it's in defense or in justice if they've harmed you. And my 5-year-old self said, huh. And now, all these decades later, I still believe that, and that makes me crazy. Because I think it is illegitimate to use force and violence against people for peaceful acts. And what I knew at age 5 is true. No, you don't have a right to put a gun in somebody's face because they didn't fill out a form. That's absurd. They're the crazy people. It's not crazy to say you want peace. It is violent, it is authoritarian, and it's got to be called out. And with no half measures, none of this I say get rid of AML, KYC entirely. Scrap it. It's completely illegitimate. It's immoral. It's a brand new and very stupid idea. You know, I picture my great-great-great-grandfather, you know, maybe trading silks for spices on the original Silk Road and, you know, traveling in a caravan and going somewhere and saying, I have traveled far and I have brought my spices and goods. And then the other guy being, well, actually, you're going to need a form to explain where you got your money and where it came from. It's completely illegitimate. It's absurd. It's an absurd notion. And every ancestor that we've had for generations and generations, and then all of a sudden, some pinheads in, you know, very recently in our lifetime, in our careers, you know, in the late 80s, early 90s, just decided, well, wait a minute, you can't do this. You know, when I was a young financial advisor, and the older brokers, you know, when I started only 32 years ago, you could call me up on the phone, or I'd call you more likely, and say, buy some IBM, and they say, okay, and you had a week to pay. No AML KYC as we know it today, no driver's license, no social security, no date of birth. You just paid. And then when they instituted these things little by little, like a frog in boiling water, the older financial advisors and stockbrokers in my office were like, what are you talking about? You need an ID to buy a stock. What, are you going to need an ID to buy a tomato next? I mean, it's absurd. And the entire notion of it is absurd. You know, well, we need to track things because of crime. No, it doesn't stop crime. The government doesn't do anything well. Bernie Madoff was the largest regulator in our history. He was chairman of the they changed the name. They were so embarrassed. Like when the airplane companies crashed so much, they changed the name. They changed the name from NASD regulation to FINRA because it was so embarrassing that the guy running the largest regulator in terms of number of registered people in the U.S. was the biggest fraudster. It's an absurd notion that these people will stop anything. I mean, is there a person in the room who would trust the government to walk their dog? If they had a dog walking program, you wouldn't trust them to do this. They can't do anything right. All they can do is kill people and murder people and do death and destruction and threats and cages. And it's illegitimate and immoral. And the idea that they could stop crime is absurd. They don't stop crime. It doesn't stop any crime. I'd challenge anybody to prove that any AML KYC initiatives have been a net positive. They've been a massive net negative, and it's completely immoral because what you're doing is you're making a criminal out of everybody in the world, and you're making money a crime. It's nobody's business what anybody does with their money. As long as if you want to catch somebody for committing a crime, a legitimate crime, a crime against the life, body, or property of somebody, then prosecute that. Don't assume that everybody's guilty and you've got to make all kinds of justifications about where your money came from. You know, these things belong in the dustbin of history. They're violent, they're immoral, they're wrong, they're ineffective, and people are afraid to say so. They're afraid to be bold enough to say that this stuff is wrong. You know, I like President Milei of Argentina. He was, you know, calmly sitting on a panel, and the guy said something about reasonable regulation, and Milei jumps up. He goes, "That guy just tried to steal from me. He's threatening me." And this is the way that we should look at it. It's a threat. It's a threat. These are violent, immoral thugs who are figuratively putting a gun at your head and saying, "You've got to fill out our forms, or we're going to put you in a cage. Get out of town. Let people be free like they were for centuries and centuries and centuries before us," is a very new, very stupid idea. And it's not the way the world should work, and it creates all kinds of friction that doesn't belong in the system. And so that's what I want to see. I want to see our influence in this space be something that that changes the nature of how we look at freedom and the ability to voluntarily transact. All of our ancestors have had this ability to voluntarily transact, and that's all we're asking. I'm just asking what my 5-year-old self was taught. You know, don't point a gun at somebody's face. Because another thing that somebody taught me when I was young, they said, you know, if somebody asks you to do something, always say, "Or else what? Or else what? What authority do you have over me?" Because the answer with these stupid, ridiculous regulations, accredited investor, you know, the people who came up with the Securities Act of 1933, you know, they when they went to school, there was no cars. You know, they didn't have automobiles. They went to school on horseback. So the rules governing us now were written by people who went to school on horseback. Their fathers were Civil War veterans. And these are the ones telling us that, oh, you can't do this DeFi protocol. You know, it's like, we fought a war over this stuff. We fought a war over this with Great Britain. This. Oh, the King's Highway, you're going to need your forms. Like, get out of town. This is freedom money. It's time for us to assert that. And I really hope that that's what comes out of this. Because number go up is great, and I'm as capitalist as they come. You can't be much more capitalist than somebody who's, owned investment firms and been a stockbroker and, in this space. I'm pro money. Great, go for it. But at the end of the day, I think what really, really will matter is what difference we have in humanity and what the ethics and the morals that we push forward. Somebody with some stupid ideas, some pinheads, in the 30s decided that they had the legitimate authority to use government force. Because the or else what part is force. This isn't suggestions. I got no problem with suggestions. If you want to suggest something, great. But when you're stealing people's money by force and threat of force, and you're getting in between voluntary transactions for people who have harmed no one, and you say, well, what happens if I don't follow it? Well, the answer is, we're going to send a paper. And what if I ignore that and throw it in the trash? What if you're the Rosa Parks of investments and you just say, I'm not doing it. I'm not moving to the back of the bus. No, thank you. No, thank you. I don't want to do your stupid forms. I don't want to, follow your rules. Well, they'll put you in a cage. They'll put you in a cage. They'll have men with guns come to you and point guns at you and put you in a cage. That's the crazy thing. I'm not the crazy one. They're the crazy ones. We're not the crazy ones. The tyrants and the authoritarians are crazy. And just because some pinheads 30 years ago and 75 years ago, respectively, came up with these AML nonsense and came up with these ridiculous, archaic laws, doesn't make them legitimate. We have a whole generation now of young people, millennials and younger, who think this is the way it's supposed to work. I say the thing I just said about KYC. They, oh gosh, you can't say that. You can't say to get rid of KYC like it's some sort of solid rail in the way that the economy works. No, it isn't. It's never been that way. I mean, were all our ancestors for hundreds of years all wrong, and some pinheads who we don't even know their name? This is the crazy thing. These people do so much damage. I don't even know. I looked up the names of these clowns who made the original Securities Act, and I've looked up the names. I forget them. They're so insignificant. Yet here they are, long after they're dead, affecting every single person in that 35,000 person room. Deca millions of dollars in lawyers trying to sort through things. Can we get clarity on what's a security and what's not? Who cares? Let people buy what they want. The markets work. Markets work. What killed the low-quality ICO wave was not regulation. They didn't even catch up for more than half a decade. What killed it is bad ideas. People are like, oh, my cousin Tony lost some money on the slots, and my cousin Jimmy lost some money on some dumb white paper. And then they say, I better not do that anymore. And that's freedom. That's freedom. You should be allowed to do these things. You should be allowed to have this kind of this kind of freedom. And that's what it is about at the end of the day. I think that at the root of this, though, it's freedom, it's decentralization, and it's also money. The idea of sound money is a very, very interesting thing. And especially if you really, really zoom out, you zoom out from, your Lambos and making some cash. God bless you if you do. And you zoom out a little bit more and say, well, okay, what is this really, really about? And I think it's cliche as it sounds. I think it's about world peace. I think it's about a more ethical and moral system that's governed by code and math rather than the whims of politicians who are living off of the wages they stole from us. I think it's about, starving the beast of government. If I ask everybody in this room to name the top 5 terrible things in the world, a lot of people are going to name various global conflicts and death. That would be high on the list. They're going to name, no matter how long your list is, you're going to get to things, whatever you have on it. I can trace it back to the Fiat system, health, obesity. That's directly tied to Safety, and has a whole chapter on it called Fiat Food in his book Fiat Standard. He talks about how corn syrup and all of this. Why do we have such terrible tasting ketchup here in America? They got corn syrup in everything. Why? because of fiat, because this phony, stupid money printer that's the ultimate altcoin scam. I mean, you know, there's nobody with a straight face would go into this conference and say, oh yeah, I'm issuing a new coin. It's called Neil Kashkari coin. And you press a button and we make however much we want. Oh, what's your supply? Ooh, whatever we want. Where does it go to, our friends? I mean, that's not money. That's not even an altcoin scam. That's a complete and total scam. And the only reason we think it's not a scam is because it's living off of the fumes of 54 years ago when it was backed by real money, by sound money. And this idea that, you know, well, it's backed by the government. Oh, okay. So I have a $1 trillion Zimbabwe note in my pocket. That's backed by the government. Government can't make money. People make money. You know, the spice traders of centuries ago, they decide what money is. It's based on what's scarce, what's available, what's accepted, what's limited in supply, not something that you can just print from thin air. And the problem is multifold. One, they're stealing money from you. They're stealing your purchasing power. They're using it to hire an army of goofball bureaucrats who get up in your business and cause all kinds of trouble. I wish they would leave us alone more. You know, sometimes they do these ratings of Congress. They say, oh, this was the most efficient Congress. They passed the most laws. Like, what are you talking about? I want them to reduce laws. We have over 1 million pages of laws in the United States. That you judge their efficiency on getting this stuff out of the way. But, you know, all of this pales in comparison to the big picture, the peace angle, you know. War and peace, good and evil. I believe good and evil is real, and we've seen it most recently with what has gone on in the world. We've seen there is real evil, and it's very interesting to me that most of the great religions of the world are against, you know, riba and fiat, and whether they call it fiat or not or know it. It makes a lot of sense to me that a religion would say that this kind of phony, horrible money is fake and harmful, because it is the most harmful thing in the world. We would have never had the Iraq war and cost 1 million lives and thousands of our own troops if it wasn't for the phony, broken fiat system. You know, we have all kinds of crazy ideologies disguised as science and all kinds of other things. It's all traced back to the fiat system. So at the end of the day, you know, that's the change that I'd like to see. As great as it is to make some money, and I'm so happy for so many people doing so well with so many deals, what I really want to see is a more peaceful world, a world that's based on voluntarism and voluntary free trade, a world that my 5-year-old self would have understood as a moral and ethical place. And we can shape the world, and we've shown that we've done this in our own space over the last decade and a half. We can shape the world. Those goofballs who came up with these stupid regulations decades and in some cases almost a century ago, they're no smarter than us. They're no more influential than us. They did something, and we can undo it. And we can dream big, and we don't have to be the frog in the boiling water that says, oh, this is the way it is. It's always been. No, it isn't. I reject that. With this thing that they laughed at, this nerd money, this ridiculous idea has worked, and it's part of the shift in the way that everything is shifting. These old goofy powers of fiat and the IMF and Davos and these kind of things, and, you know, CNN and the New York Times, they're all failing, and they're being replaced by, you know, Joe Rogan and decentralization and the kind of companies that we see here at this event and at the other event this week. And we can have a more peaceful world, and we can spearhead that forward. And I think that as we get on in our years and we look back at what we've done in our life, I think that that's a high calling to say that we helped bring peaceful money. We helped bring voluntary trade and freedom and break through from these chains of tyranny and control and centralization. And we made a better world with that at the root of it is better money, more sound money, money that's governed by math and code and consensus rather than the whims of centralized politicians who are helping their cronies and friends and furthering violence around the world. It's something to truly be excited about. And there's a lot to be, you know, frustrated at in the world, but you can always go and throw some sats at the wall and say, I'm starving the beast. I'm doing something better. I'm part of a system of decentralization and peace and freedom. And it seemed like a crazy, ridiculous, absurd idea 12, 13, 14 years ago, but it doesn't seem so crazy now. Doesn't seem so crazy now. It's here and we can do it, and the people in this room are instrumental in doing it, and we can continue to do it, and we can reject this, and we can call out the thieves and the thugs and the violent authoritarians for what they are. And we have the moral high ground. We have the ethical high ground. We have the ability to do something better and create a better world driven by technologies, just as the printing press did, just as other great technologies have done in the world. And we can, at the end of our life, hopefully look back and know that we actually made the world a better place. And that's the highest calling we can possibly imagine. And I want to thank you and enjoy you on this journey. Thank you very much.